Can you imagine being in prison, then stealing from it and escaping? It sounds like a plot straight out of a movie, but that's exactly what one daring thief managed to pull off with an ingenious twist. In 1934, at the Central Prison in Arizona, a prisoner walked into the guard's office wearing a prison uniform and holding a strangely shaped gun. The prisoner wore a confident and enigmatic smile and calmly said, "According to the law, you are responsible for keeping me safe from any danger. If I were to shoot you or cause harm, you would be accountable because your negligence allowed me to get this extraordinary weapon and escape from my cell. Now that I have a gun that fires 10 shots at the press of a button, I want you to stay calm and cooperate with me. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to get out of this prison. Let's head to the back door quietly." The guards, stunned by the strange weapon and the prisoner's calm and confident demeanor, remained seated. The prisoner approached them, picked up a gun from the table, and then ordered one of the guards, Finn, to take off his clothes and give them to him. The guard complied, removing his clothes, which the prisoner then put on before exiting through the door. Shortly after, the prisoner returned, opened the door, asked Finn to come with him, and then shut the door again. The prisoner chose Finn specifically because, over the 2 months of his incarceration, he had observed all the guards and discovered that Finn was quiet and weak-willed, making him the ideal candidate for assisting in the escape without causing any disturbance. Before leaving, the prisoner warned the guards not to inform anyone, to prevent any harm coming to Finn or anyone else. The prisoner and Finn left through the guard's gate and hailed a taxi. Before the car could move, the prisoner threw the mysterious gun out of the window. When the guard came close and discovered that the gun was actually a crudely carved piece of wood coated in tar with inscriptions of the police officers' names and the phrase "With love, John Dillinger," it became clear that the elaborate ruse had been a stroke of pure genius. This story is one of the thrilling adventures of John Dillinger, a criminal renowned in the 20th century for his skills in escaping from prison, robbing banks, and killing police officers. John Herbert Dillinger was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. His father owned a small grocery store, and John was known for his bad behavior, leading to his expulsion from several schools. At the age of 14, he dropped out of school after being expelled and began working with his father. In 1924, John had a falling out with his father, assaulted him, and then fled the store, traveling to Indianapolis. There he was captivated by the city's beauty. John sought work in grocery stores due to his experience with his father, but only found a job in a shoe shop. By day, John worked and spent his earnings in nightclubs, and by night, he resorted to stealing food from a nearby grocery store. Thanks to his nimble skills, he could steal anything quickly without being noticed, using wide sleeves on his shirt to conceal the stolen goods. He would visit the store daily, chatting with the shop owner while stealing food and hiding it in his shirt sleeve. He continued this for 4 months, working during the day, partying at night, and wandering the city streets during his free time, mesmerized by its beauty. During this period, his father searched for him and eventually found him. When his father first saw him, he ran to him and embraced him tenderly for the first time in his life, a moment John had missed dearly. This single embrace was enough to bring John back to his father. His father decided to move the family to the countryside to live on a farm, away from the city's negative influence, hoping to steer John away from its bad effects. John returned to the countryside with his father, hiding some money he had saved from his work at the shop. He stayed at the farm with his father until he received a letter from the grocery store owner from whom he had stolen every day. The letter read, "John, I noticed your thefts from the very first day, and I saw you hiding things in your sleeve. I did not speak to you because I was impressed with your skills in the speed of your thievery and your ability to maintain calm. You have developed so much that I no longer notice your thefts. You are an artist and a genius, but I advise you to channel your abilities into something useful. I am sure you will succeed in any field you choose." John was surprised by the letter and decided to return to the city to discover and direct his talent. After only 2 months with his father, John went back to the city and immediately went to the grocery store to apologize and offer to pay for what he had stolen. However, the shopkeeper forgave him and said, "I forgive you. I don't want anything from you, but promise me you'll use your talents for something good." After this encounter, John tried working in various fields such as the circus, currency exchange, and banks, but was rejected from all of them. Subsequently, John found work at a nightclub at the age of 17. He was exceptionally talented, and according to sources, no one in the history of gambling games had luck like John's. He had an extraordinary ability to shuffle cards and cheat and could determine the winner of any game before it even began. He collaborated with numerous con artists and earned significant commissions for manipulating the results. He continued this for 2 years, during which he amassed a large amount of money and repaid his debts to the shopkeeper who had helped him discover his talent. On one occasion, he was caught cheating by someone who turned out to be a member of a gang. The person threatened to kill him if they ever met again. Ironically, this person later became one of John's closest friends. After being exposed, John fled and tried to find another job, avoiding gambling halls to prevent encountering the person again. He worked in a pool hall where he met someone named Ted. Both were failures with poor upbringing, so they decided to rob a supermarket. They entered the supermarket with a weapon, but their plan failed, and they were arrested. At this time, John was supposed to be sentenced to 2 years in prison. When his father learned of this, he reached out to support him. Unfortunately, his father's advice was disastrous. He suggested that John tell the judge he was part of a gang and that they had beaten him and forced him to commit the robbery. According to his father, this would reduce the sentence because John was under duress. On the day of the trial, John confessed to being a gang member. However, instead of a reduced sentence, the situation worsened. Instead of being tried for theft, he was charged with being part of a criminal organization and involvement in criminal activities. As a result, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison instead of 2. This judgment was issued in 1925. John was shocked by the news as the sentence was final and could not be appealed. With no other option, John had to accept his imprisonment and forget that period of his life. To make matters worse, when he first entered prison, he encountered the person who had threatened to kill him if they met again. However, over time, this person became one of John's closest friends. As the days passed, John became the leader of the most powerful gang in the prison. During his time in prison, he used his time wisely, studying everything around him, from the guards' routines to their shifts. He even drew a detailed map of the prison and carefully examined every part of it. After 6 years of incarceration, John devised a meticulous escape plan. He discovered that the weakest point in the prison was the laundry room. Under the washing machines, he found pipes leading directly from the basement. If he could disconnect these pipes and dig around them, he could access the basement or the space between the prison and the sewers. From there, he could reach the sewers and escape to anywhere in the city. When the time came to execute the escape plan, an unexpected event disrupted all of John's preparations. A week before the execution, John was sitting with his gang in the prison yard during break time, discussing the final details of the plan. But at the end of the break, John was summoned by the guards to the investigator's office. There, John was informed of his parole decision and that he would be free starting the next day. This news did not make John happy. Instead, it made him anxious because it meant that the plan he had worked on for years had become unnecessary. During the investigation, one of the detectives asked to see the papers John had with him. When the detective saw the drawings and plans, he considered them as an escape plan. However, John, with complete calm and an unexpected reaction, claimed that he was working on a detective novel and that he was drawing the scenes because he wasn't good at writing. After some discussion, the detectives were convinced that the papers were not dangerous. The next day, John was released from prison. Although John himself did not execute the escape plan, his plan was so precise and detailed that just a month after his release, his gang successfully executed the prison break as planned. Immediately after their escape, they met with John, who had prepared everything for them. He led them to their new headquarters, a basement in a gang-ridden neighborhood. In this area, the police were also corrupt, assisting gangs in trafficking illegal substances. After his release, John forgot the advice given to him by the grocery store owner and decided to use all his skills for theft. His first heist took place in 1930, just 2 months after his release from prison. John and his gang entered the bank dressed in formal suits and leading a convoy of black cars. John took the lead of the convoy with 3 of his associates. Upon entering the bank, John claimed that they were from a secret bureau tasked with moving the funds from this bank to the Federal Reserve due to a potential bomb threat. John claimed that the bank was a target and that they needed to cooperate to quickly empty the vault and take all necessary security measures to protect everyone. John was so convincing that the bank management believed him without verifying with the police. John had prepared everything in advance. His gang consisted of 22 people, all carrying fake security IDs. They were armed with small submachine guns and pistols, and among their weapons were 8 plastic submachine guns resembling toys. Due to their limited budget, they could not afford to buy real weapons for everyone. Everything was meticulously planned, and the bank employees assisted John and his gang, making everything seem authentic. When they opened the vault and began moving the money, one of the employees noticed that 2 of John's men were smiling. This was a signal that everything was going according to plan. The employee realized something was wrong and decided to try to leave the premises. Upon realizing that the heist was compromised, John shouted the prearranged code at the top of his lungs, signaling the shift to the backup plan. According to this plan, they needed to take the bank employees hostage and attempt to escape through the back door with as much money as possible. John and his crew managed to escape after a confrontation with the police, leading to a high-speed chase where they clashed with security forces. The confrontation resulted in the deaths of 2 of John's men. Despite the challenges, the operation was ultimately successful, and they managed to secure a significant amount of money. Following this heist, John had a personal vendetta to settle, the supermarket owner who had played a role in sending him to prison for 3 years. John Dillinger decided to exact his revenge on the supermarket owner who had contributed to his imprisonment. He and his gang stormed the supermarket, armed and intimidating, surrounding the place. They stole the safe and cleared out the store shelves completely. After the robbery, John went to the impoverished neighborhoods and distributed all the stolen goods to the homeless, promising them that he would repeat this act and provide more aid in the future. His goal was to incite the poor to rise up against the corrupt wealthy. John continued to provide regular aid to the homeless, earning him the status of a hero in their eyes. After 6 months of distributing supplies, John decided to turn his vengeance towards the police, whom he blamed for depriving him of a decent life outside prison. John instructed the homeless to launch attacks on the police, offering a $200 reward to anyone who killed a police officer, escaped without capture, and provided proof of the killing. Within a week, more than 20 police officers were killed, but the murders were recorded as unsolved. They occurred in various locations in different ways, confusing the police and leaving them unable to handle the situation effectively. John's objective was to instill fear in people about joining the police and to make the police themselves a source of fear and anxiety rather than security. However, John's plan did not last more than 2 weeks. The homeless began to be killed while attempting the attacks, which threatened John's reputation and angered the public who had supported him. Due to the heavy losses among the homeless and to prevent the situation from worsening, John decided to stop the rewards and cancel the campaign entirely. John then decided to execute a heist by gathering information on the wealthiest individuals in the city. On a single day, he and his team divided into several groups, each consisting of 3 members. Their mission was to enter the homes of the targeted wealthy individuals, take them hostage, and force them to sign checks for the largest possible amount. Indeed, in one day, they went to the homes of 7 wealthy people, forced them to write checks, and held them in their homes until dawn the next day. The team responsible for cashing the checks then collected them from the captives and headed to the banks to cash them. Before heading to the bank, each of the hostages was forced to call the bank and inform them that someone would be coming on their behalf to cash a check for a specific amount, requesting them to process it. This maneuver allowed them to cash the checks and the team returned to their hideout. After completing the operation, everyone withdrew with a substantial and respectable sum. This heist was one of the most successful and unusual in John's criminal career. However, a few months later, John and his gang attempted to rob a bank in Bluffton, Ohio. The plan failed and they were arrested by the police. Before being transferred, John was held in the local police station near the bank. That evening, precisely at 8 o'clock, 3 men in formal attire, who appeared to be federal agents, entered the station. They approached the duty officer and claimed to be FBI investigators. They showed their badges and informed him that they had an order to interrogate John Dillinger and then transfer him to county jail. They explained that the police department would cooperate with them in this operation, as John would be transported by their vehicles. The officer, fully cooperative, was taken aback when he saw the so-called investigators with John. It became evident that these 2 men were actually from John's gang, not federal agents at all. They ambushed the officer, injected him with a sedative, and whisked John away through the police station's exit, handcuffed, before driving off to their hideout as if nothing had happened. 5 days after this incident, John decided it was time for revenge. He and his crew returned to the police station, raiding the precinct and seizing large quantities of weapons and ammunition. Following this confrontation, John felt invincible and vowed to rob a bank every week using traditional methods. He declared that meticulous planning and exploiting the weak were for the timid. He was ready to dive into the fray with force. Indeed, John hit a bank, but the plan failed. He tried to escape but was apprehended along with 2 of his gang members. He was imprisoned at the Crown Point County Jail in Indiana, with a trial scheduled 2 months from his arrest. During this period, John endured severe torture in prison, inflicted both by resentful police officers and inmates under their orders. The day before the trial, John executed an escape from the police station as described at the beginning of this story. Sources claim he used a wooden gun to overpower a guard, forced him to unlock the cell, stole the remaining weapons, and compelled the guards to help him escape from the jail. However, the account I mentioned earlier is considered the most accurate, despite its unusual nature, as most sources corroborate it. At this time, John had disappeared completely, clearly either trying to flee the country or working on acquiring a new identity. Sources suggest he had reached out to his former gang members, advising them to abandon their criminal activities and lead decent lives, as they had accumulated a substantial amount of money. Indeed, the gang disbanded, leaving John with just 4 of his closest associates. But it was too late. The FBI had assigned a number of investigators to a sole mission: capturing John, setting a strict deadline for their task. The Bureau offered a reward for anyone who could assist in bringing John to justice. On July 18, 1934, a woman contacted the FBI, claiming she knew everything about John Dillinger and could deliver him to them if her conditions were met. When asked about her demands, she requested $20,000 in citizenship, as she was an immigrant from Romania. The Bureau requested a day to review her terms. The following day, the woman called the Bureau again to check their decision. The case officer informed her they would only offer her an $800 reward and assistance with immigration to become a legal resident, which was the best they could offer. The woman agreed, as she had no other option, and revealed that she was a nightclub hostess and would be going to a movie with John within days. If she received sufficient guarantees, she would help them capture him. The Bureau agreed, and the location and time were set. On July 22, 1934, at precisely 8 p.m., operatives disguised as cinema staff and workers were stationed inside the theater. When John arrived, the officer in charge of the operation lit a cigarette as a signal to the others that John was among them. Sensing danger, John drew his gun, fired into the air, and began running through the crowd. He exited the building and fled into the streets, but one of the officers shot him, and he collapsed dead. The next day, authorities announced John's death at the age of 31 and issued a gag order prohibiting any discussion of his case due to its bizarre nature and his popularity. Imagine he had been providing monthly salaries to over 2,000 impoverished families, and many considered him a hero rather than a criminal. That's our story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in stories like this, I recommend checking out the channel for more strange and adventurous tales. Share your thoughts on John Dillinger in the comments. See you in the next video. Goodbye.